Don't let them fool you. They're gonna try and sway you against the good word of Ichiro Oda, aka Goda. But in reality, these people have missed the plot entirely. They're in the same camp as the Rothschilds. They're in the same camp as the Freemasons, as Bohemian Grove guys, obviously the aliens that made the pyramids a long time ago. They're in the same camp as the Lizardmen. And who is they? They are the naysayers. When Ichiro Oda answered a question a few weeks ago, talking about Monkey D. Luffy and the Gear 5 power, what did these naysayers say? Well, Oda told us nothing. This is just trash.
No.
Absolutely not. These folks are not seeing the bigger picture. Their imagination is lacking. And how could you possibly be a One Piece fan, no, a One Piece savant, and have a lacking imagination?
Unacceptable!
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Oda said one sentence, but that one sentence carries, you can argue, the weight of the world. Which world? The One Piece world. What am I talking about right now? Well, Oda did a Q&A a few weeks ago, and I did a video covering the entire thing, boom, over here. But there were a few questions and answers that I thought needed their own video. And this was one of them. It was the first question to Oda's Q&A 10 questions. And the first question, let's read this through and through 2 times over. First, courtesy of Otter from the Library of Ohara. And I quote, when using Gear 5th, Luffy takes out things like goggles or a baseball helmet out of his Hagoromo cloud scarf. Please tell us how that works. Oda's response, it's a gateway to Nika's fantasies. Now this, obviously it means nothing. Oda is just tricking you heathens, you monkeys, into believing that this is quality content. Nay. I say nay. Phooey, this is trash, like the vast majority of Oda's outside content.
Wait.
No. Trust the process. And I don't mean like the 76ers in basketball. No, I mean really trust the process. But there's also another version of this I want to read to you too, over on Pew Pies' account with the help of a few lads, and I quote, when Luffy is using Gear 5th, he pulls out things like goggles and baseball helmet from what looks like a Hagoromo feathered raiment. Please tell us how it works. It's the entrance to Nika's fantasy. The feathered raiment part I think is interesting, which is why I read it again from their translation. Shout outs to both Pew Pies and Company, and of course Oda from the Library of Ohara for translating what Oda said in the Q&A. Now, to me, I think that Oda said actually a lot in that one sentence here, because the idea of tapping into one's fantasies, you can take it at face value or not at face value. But the reality of the matter is that Luffy, he is no longer a regular gum rubber dude. He is now a mythical rubber dude. Whether you like it or not, that doesn't matter. That's what Oda wrote. And with that comes a lot of changes, obviously. But the thing is, we don't know what these changes are exactly. We don't know. He is a mythical rubber dude that is specific to the world of One Piece, the Nika. There are no Nikas in mythology that we know of that are rubbery body, and he's also the sun god at the same time. How does that work? Well, we don't know. Oda, over the course of time, will get to it, obviously, but it remains a mystery as to what exactly Luffy is doing, and he is doing some of the craziest, gnarliest things we have seen in the One Piece series. In fact, you know what? I feel like Luffy's fighting style right now is far more entertaining than it has been, because when he does Gear 5 shenanigans, you just don't know what he's going to do. And if you agree with that sentiment, then of course, hit your boy with the thumbs up for the video, subscribe to the channel, and click on that bell to join the notification squad. And as you do that, I'm actually reminded of a quote that was said by Crocodile. I love this quote, and I thought Crocodile was spitting. He was spitting for sure back then, and he's spitting now. Episode 110 of One Piece. Depending on one's training and how they're used, devil fruit abilities can become a means of fighting as powerful as any. A lot of folks would assume that, let's say by now, someone like Robin in the story would have armor haki and be able to use actively observation haki. But in reality, no. She's been pretty damn effective and powerful with relying on mainly her wit, certain techniques, but predominantly her ability to use her Devil-Fruit powers. Devil-Fruit powers are insane for sure, but a lot of time that also depends on your ability, your creativity with your powers. And when Luffy first goes into Gear 5, what does he say? He says in that same chapter, 1044, he can finally do all the things that he wanted to do. Recall what Kaido said about awakening your powers. When you awaken your powers, it's both your body and mind catching up to your abilities. And I've done a video on that one over here, check it out, boom. Where when we see people use their powers, they use them in different ways depending on who they are. In Luffy's mind, there were so many things he wanted to do, but he couldn't do until he awakened his different powers. So if we pinpoint Kaido's statement to the body and the mind specifically could involve the imagination of the individual, where the person has to be very imaginative and very creative with their powers, and that is a part of the process of the mind trying to catch up with the fruit. And part of that is being able to tap into the fantasies of what the Nika can do. Because again, we don't know what a Nika can and cannot do. We don't know what a ninja can and cannot do, but when we find out that he can, let's say, tap into some sort of gateway, a gateway of fantasies, and do whatever he wants to do, well, it looks like we're getting slowly but surely, closer and closer and closer to that sort of Tom and Jerry, Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, Pepe Le Pew, Animaniacs shenanigans. It doesn't matter if physics is in the way, just do it. You know why? Because your fantasies, your imagination, young boy, is unlimited. And the fact that this Haguma scarf is some sort of gateway for Luffy to tap in those fantasies, I think it's a very important thing, because I think it harkens back directly to Vegapunk's quote in chapter 1069. Half of that, a great number. What does he say? Every devil fruit is a possibility for human evolution that someone desired. If only I could be like this. If only I could be like that. All of those powers represent the many branches of the future of humanity. But that unnatural status is loathed by the sea, the mother of nature, a fitting punishment for its sin. Those with powers exist in a different dimension, dreamed up by someone else before them. Now take that quote that Vegapunk says and apply it to Oda's comments about Luffy. It is a stargate. He reaches into his own imagination and he just makes things. Things just manifest. Well. It seems like to me, personally, that the idea, the core concept of what a devil fruit is existing with the character Monkey D. Luffy. It is being personified by Luffy. And it's not just literal, I think, but it's also symbolic too. Because when you think about the idea of someone like Luffy, who has a very important dream, wants to achieve, you can argue that the weight of the world, nature, stifles his ability to reach those dreams. Of course, this is something that we experience in real life in the day-to-day, where a lot of us do have these sort of ambitions, these goals and dreams, these aspirations, but life gets in the way. And we find ourselves like 30 years down the line, wishing we had an X or Y and Z. And being able to in earnest achieve those dreams is a lot of times against the natural order, since it's so rare for everyone to achieve their dreams. It takes someone that is beyond the pale, someone that is larger than life. In some ways, you can argue an unnatural existence. And the possibilities of humanity's future that the fruits personify, the if only I could be like that, if only I could get a helmet real quick, if only I could grab some goggles. The idea of different dimensions, planes of existence, are not new in One Piece. We already know that Brook visited the underworld when he died, before he was taken back to the physical world, the real world, by his Devil power. So that means that the powers at a baseline can interact with another plane of existence, since Brook himself could be brought back from another plane of existence. We know that a person like Bluno can go into another dimension, the door ability, and then he can just come out whenever he wants to, but it's another plane of existence with the door power. Obviously, Brûlé and the Mirror World, the main battleground for the Katakuri and Luffy fight, is what? In another plane of existence that is tied to the mirrors of Whole Cake Island, probably all around the world. Obviously, if you watch Film Red, Uta and her abilities of the Sing Sing world, where Uta was essentially omniscient. She could do whatever she wanted to do within the Sing Sing world. And Luffy has a power that is based on a One Piece deity. Whether it's real or not, the fact of the matter is that it is perceived to be the case by many people across the world, even to this day. Folks like Kuma literally worshipped the sun god Nika, and here its power is in the flesh. And this is ultimately, arguably, the reason why Luffy might just be one of one, where only he can utilize this alternate dimension of imagination to his whim, beck and call, via his scarf, but other Mythical Zone users, like let's say Yamato or even the elders who might be Mythical Zone users, they can't do the same thing, maybe aside from Emu. And the idea of this scarf does tie, of course, back to mythology in many respects. A lot of times, put it simply, this floating Hagama scarf, which also does exist in the mythologies and pantheons, like for example, in Norse mythology, Freya does have a feathered cloak. Recall the Pew Pies version of that translation, the feathered raiment? Well, Freya has a feathered cloak, which does impart the ability of flight upon her. And this scarf, for a lot of different deities, whether it be Chinese or Japanese, this sort of scarf does like the same thing, where it does impart at a baseline the ability to fly, which is probably the reason why Luffy nowadays has no real need to actually, like, let's say, do a skywalk, Gear 4 Bowman thing. No. He just kind of floats and chills because the scarf does impart him that sort of magical attribute or that higher dimension attribute. And I use those words not loosely because this sort of Hagama scarf that you would see on Buddhist entities and deities, on Shinto ones as well, i.e. Fuijin, it is something that does tie innately to supernatural elements, aspects, alternate dimensional ones, magical ones, potentially, right? Because we do have, for example, the 5 elders, when they touch down on Egged Island for the first time, whether it be Jay and then afterwards, the rest of them, what happens? They use these magical circles, and when the elders are first introduced in chapter 233, people have caught that when we see the room, we see these sort of magical circles that are in the area. And when you think about the idea of what Luffy is doing with his imagination and the Hagama scarf, the ability of quote-unquote magic to be able to transport an elder beyond space and time from point A to point B with these black lightning bolts. It could be the case here that all of these sources come from the same spot. They come from the same plane of existence, the unnatural plane of existence that the world itself rebukes, the different dimension that ties into the devil fruits, a dimension that is based on imagination, that is based on dreams and hopes and creativity, a dimension that is, you can argue in many ways, very suited for an author like Eiichiro Oda. The meta take on this, you can argue in some ways, is that the ability to tap into creativity is a cornerstone of a lot of fictional writing. And I think that Oda, when he made that bet to have Luffy the way he is now, it's also a bet on himself for the future and how much fun he could have with the character moving forward. Because that is important too. The aspects of fun that tie into creativity, that tie into joy, that tie into Joy Boy. You could argue that it is a meta take on the ability for an author to truly express themselves within their own creative work. Someone like Oda, who's been doing this for, let's say, most of his life, right? All that to say is that I think that Luffy is doing the gnarliest things, and the root of it all could be the literal root of the powers themselves, an unnatural dimension of imagination. But, that's me taking Oda's comment, his one sentence, to the maximum. Let me know your stance on the subject matter at hand. If you enjoy your boy's video content, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell to join the notification squad. I'm gonna catch you guys and gals on the flip side.
See you. Bye-bye.